do a good job on you. I don't know what I'm talking about. But if Miss Kim needs more sleep.
You know where 7th Street is? Right there off 7th and Pollard. Behind school. You know where Rosie's Soul Food is?
I'll be over there.
There you go.
Yeah, I know where you're going to be.
And I didn't know.
That?
Flew with it for a while. I might have let it be.
Don't we go for that?
Yeah.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm fabulous. We're all here this morning, and I appreciate that. Remember that we need to, goodness. We need to get our sign-in sheets done, and we need sign-in sheets for both HHSC and for TAP. And let me appreciate everybody so far this morning. Yesterday, I got my sign-in sheets, and there was a couple of people who had printed their names out next to their signature, and I really do appreciate that because, you know, I couldn't read your signature, but once you printed it out, I had no doubt who that was. So if you will do all of your sign-in sheets, get those things done, and get them in my box over there, I will appreciate it. Same thing here. Sign in on the sheet. Make sure Miss Kim has it, and then, you know, it won't get lost. Today we're still the group is about families in recovery, because remember this week is family week, and so we're talking about that. We're also talking about early recovery. So families in recovery with those of us who would be in early recovery can even be a little bit more problematic. But today we're going to talk about a couple of things that I want you to get a hold of. I'm an alcoholic. By the grace of God, I'm sober. The other thing I am is a child of an alcoholic. So I want us to go over real quickly this morning. We may have to take a bunch of long breaks, but that'll be all right. But I want us to understand how that plays into our recovery, who we are, what's happening for, you know, because of the fact that we might be a child of an alcoholic. But then I want you also to pay attention to this little drawing on the board. I don't know if you can see it at North, but take my word for it, it's very good. You know, this, if we could take it down, we could sell that for some real money. They'd hang it up in Louvre and places like that. It's really good. But this is a picture of a guy doing what?
Walking up the stairs.
Walking up some stairs, moving up some stairs. So in our recovery, guess what? We're going to be at different levels in our recovery as we recover from this mess, right? So what we're also going to need to understand is that I may not stay on that level of recovery. I may get myself up here somewhere and then decide to step back down somewhere. So it kind of goes up and down. So today I can be here. Tomorrow I can be over here where it looks like I'm progressing really well, and your counselor is going to be excited about all that. And then the next day we're down here disappointing that person again. So, you know, that's just the nature of addiction, okay? So we're not going to worry about it. Let me share this with you as well. I am not certain. Hopefully by the end of the day, I will be certain. Tomorrow is the 4th of July.
You going to be with us?
I don't know. Tomorrow is the 4th of July, and my plan is to be over at North, videoing to here. But I was told this morning we may be on a different schedule, so I don't know. But I will let you guys know what's going to happen, or let somebody know, and they'll let you know, and all of that stuff, because I'm waiting for somebody to let me know. But it's going to be the 4th of July. We are going to do some, we're going to have a great time, whether we're doing this or we're doing something else. So, what does it mean to be the adult child of an alcoholic or an addict? What does that mean?
It's something Christian, someone a little hard. I don't know. Big responsibilities.
Yeah, if you look at it right on the surface of it, what did we say? I'm an adult, right? I'm grown up. I'm full grown. I'm not going to get any more bigger than what I am. I'm not going to get any taller. Might get a little bit, but I am adult. I'm grown. But the rest of that is that I grew up with my parents being alcoholics. I grew up with my parents being addicts. Has that affected who I am? Of course it does. Of course it does. We talk about nature and nurture. As you grew up, whatever type of parents that you had, the people who were living in your life, in your home with you, are going to flavor who you are. It's going to flavor how you grew up. It's going to flavor who you are today and how you interact with other people. And here's the next big thing. What happens in our lives, in my home, with my children, are going to flavor them, right? So they're going to have an issue as well. If I have the issue of being an adult child of an alcoholic, then my children, if I'm an alcoholic, then my children are going to grow up with those same issues. We've already talked about the fact that, hey, if I want my kids to do a certain thing, what's the best way to make sure that they do it?
Teach them.
Say that again?
Teach them.
Teach them. Yeah, how do you teach somebody? What's the best way to teach somebody?
And show them.
Yeah, show them, he said. By example. By example. I don't want my kids, none of my kids smoke. I got a daughter and 2 sons. None of them smoke. I got a whole bunch of grandchildren. Some of them are totally nuts. I don't know, but I have never seen any of them smoke or drink. So I'm fortunate about that. God has had a hand in that. It's an amazing thing. But if I don't want my kids to smoke. That's the worst thing in the world that you could possibly do. It kills more people than anything else. So I'm going to be an example to them. So I don't smoke. Back when they were very, very young, I did, but it came around to all sorts of reasons made me stop smoking. But as I look back on it, one of the greatest things about me stopping smoking is my kids don't see me as an example of how it's okay to smoke. Because here's the deal, millions of people smoke, right? Is it okay? No, it's legal. It's even socially acceptable in some instances, but it ain't okay. It's not okay. Even if it's legal and socially acceptable, that does not make it okay. So, we need to get to the place where we can understand that what we do is going to flavor what they do. My kids are going to do the things that I do. That means my grandchildren are going to do the things my kids do. My great-grandchildren, which I have a couple of them, they're going to do what they see my grandchildren do, who are doing what they see their parents do when they're doing what they see me do. So, that's why it's important to decide what I need to do and then do it. Right? So my kids don't need to see me doing anything that I don't need to see. I have a desire that they don't. And I've had people in group. I've had people in my office talking to me and stuff like that as a counselor. And I've had dozens and dozens of people telling me, I don't want my children to do what I do. Right? And so, what do we tell our kids?
Don't do what I do.
Yeah,
I do.
perfectly. Yeah, yeah. Don't do what I do. Do what I say do. Does that work? Of course not. Your kids are going to tell their kids, don't do what I do what I say do. Exactly. They're going to follow your example. They're going to do the wrong thing and tell their kids not to do the wrong thing. Don't do what I do what I say do. And so they've got that perfect excuse to get into drugs, get into alcohol, use tobacco, do all kinds of crazy mess. So here's the deal. We're going to talk about a few of these things growing up. It's being the adult child of an alcoholic entails a whole lot more than just being a grown-up person whose family happened to have problems with alcohol and drugs. It entails a whole lot of things. When we look, if we understand the disease of alcoholism, and then we understand the issue of being an adult child of an alcoholic, then we can understand some of the things that's going on in our life. We can understand some of the emotions that play on us. We can understand some of the issues that we have in our lives that it looks like no one else in the whole world has. We have. We can understand the different feelings we have that we don't see in other people, but they're in us. How did they get in there? How did they become ingrained? How did they get there? A lot of that has to do with what was put into us as kids. And being an adult child of an alcoholic has a few things that it causes. Here's the thing: families develop their own rules. In your family, you had your own rules. Each family, we have these societal rules that we accept as rules. These are things we made ought to follow. You can't speed back and forth to the store. I go to Bridge City a whole lot over the big bridge, and on that, they're working on one of those bridges. So the other one, when you come down, it says 40 miles an hour right here because there's a real short turn this way and a real short turn that way. And when you come over that bridge, a lot of people are doing 60, 65 miles an hour. And when they get into that turn, it's kind of gets hairy. So the police are right there. And just about every day when we go by there, you've got somebody stopped over there because you just don't realize how far you're going and how fast you're going when you get there. But those are societal rules that should be followed. They're not always followed, but they should be followed. There are some other things you can't, where your rights and all of that kind of stuff begin. Where your rights. Wait a minute, I'm trying to say this. Your rights end where my rights begin. You have the right to do anything you want to, as long as it doesn't infringe on me, right? So that's another societal rule. But in our homes, in our families, we came up with different rules. In my family, my dad used to tell me, and I said this yesterday, but my dad used to tell us all, look, kids are meant to be seen and not heard. So, and that's true. But in that situation, I ought to be able to say something about what's going on in my family, right? I should be able to say that. I should be able to have a discussion with folks. So, families develop their own rules. Either spoken or unspoken, we understand that we have these rules in place, and usually these are rules to help us cope with the behavior of an alcoholic caregiver. Who's your caregiver when you're growing up? Yeah, my mom, my dad, they're my caregivers. When I'm growing up, they are the people who are taking care of me. They're the folks that are supposed to be there to make sure that I'm okay. They're the folks that are supposed to be there to make sure that I have food, clothing, and a place to stay. Now look, they have moved that on over to you. Now you have the same responsibilities with all those children or grandchildren that live in your house, right? We're supposed to be making sure they have good food, enough of it, and it's nourishing, and then we're supposed to be making sure that they have the correct clothes, they go to school dressed correctly, they out in society dressed correctly, they've got the clothing that they need, and they have boundaries that they have to follow. We ought to all have some good, solid boundaries in our life. But what if your caregiver is an alcoholic or an addict? What happens then?
Boundaries out the door.
Yeah, a lot of those things are just going to go by the wayside, because what's the most important thing in that caregiver's life?
Well, take care of the kids.
The most important thing in that caregiver's life, unfortunately, is to take care of their addiction, to make sure they have the alcohol that they need, to make sure that they have the drugs that they need, to make sure that they're not going to get in trouble because of this, that, and the other. So, consequently, those of us who are in that household become just way secondary, right? Yeah, he's going to take care of that thing first. He's going to make sure that that thing is taken care of, whatever it is and whatever it needs. He's going to make sure that he has, or she has, a lot of times it's a lady, that they're going to make sure that they have enough of this drug or enough of that drug so that they'll be able to take care of their own addiction. And my children come next, come last. They're not going to be the first thing in my life. And that's true. Look, we may not want to admit it, but it's true in our lives as well. I have met a few, but I haven't met many people in treatment that would tell me they didn't care about their children. We all care about our children, right? We do. We care, even if our children turn out to be butt heads, no count, no good for nothing, lowering the snake's belly in a wagon rat, piece of slime. We still care for that person. They are our flesh and blood, right? That's what we say every day. Hey, I love my daughter. I love my sons. I love my grandsons and granddaughters. I love all those people, and yet I'm going to show them how to slowly kill themselves. That makes sense at all? If I love somebody, then certainly I shouldn't be, teaching them how to take their own lives slowly. Shouldn't be doing those things. So families develop their own set of rules. Some of those rules were spoken, some of those rules were unspoken. To cope with the behavior, all of these rules: don't talk, listen, don't tell anybody anything, don't go to school and tell your teacher there's an issue at our home, don't do this, don't do that. All of those are there to protect what we talked about yesterday, the victim in that situation. We're going to make sure that that person is protected. In protecting that person, what are we doing? We're enabling that person to continue in their addiction. Right? So, it says, look, we're going to do all of the stuff that we're doing is to cope with the behavior of an alcoholic caregiver, or an addicted caregiver can be addicted to any drug that's out there. For example, don't talk about family problems. Don't talk about family problems. Don't tell anybody we got issues. Don't let people know that there's an alcohol or drug issue going on in our family. We don't want people to know that, or avoid conflict. And I know, all of us in here know how a drug or alcohol behavior is. Drug and alcohol behavior does not lead us to our finest moment, does it? We're using drugs and alcohol, we're going to do stuff that later on we're ashamed of. So in the home, as a child, we're trying to avoid conflict. We don't want to get into any conflict. We don't want to have an argument. We don't want to get that person who is addicted to whatever they're addicted to. We don't want to get them into their feelings, because once they get into their feelings, they get into our faith. So we want to make sure that those people stay on an even keel. We don't want to try to get those people off somewhere where they're not supposed to be. And our children are doing the same thing. They're trying to keep us to a place where they're avoiding any of that. So growing up, these rules may have been necessary to survive. However, in future relationships, these same rules can be very harmful. So here's the deal. I grow up with those things, and if I have one of those deals where he says I'm supposed to avoid conflict, what do you think that happens? What do you think that does to an adult child of an alcoholic?
Avoid conflicts.
They do. Either they become very passive and they avoid conflict. They don't want to be in conflict. They don't want to have any arguments with people. They don't want to get messed up with people. They don't want to do anything that might cause them a little bit of a conflict, or they go entirely the other direction. I see people who they're fighting a whole bunch. They're angry all the time. They're in conflict every time they get an opportunity. And a lot of times, if you take that back, I'm an anger guy too. So a lot of times you take that back to their childhood and you'll see where they had those unrealistic rules in their family. I can't have any conflict whatsoever. Do you know how hard it is for young people not to have a conflict with their brothers or sisters? I tried to kill my brother the whole time we were growing up. My big brother tried to kill me, and I tried to kill the one below me. And we had conflict all the time. We fought like cats and dogs, but we had to do it outside of the view of my dad because he was a raging alcoholic. My mom was the chief enabler, so we'd have to do it outside of that kind of stuff. So as I grew up, I had that ingrained in me so that, I had a little bit of the avoidance syndrome where I would try to avoid some things. But once I got past that, I got over into the aggressive thing. Okay, I can't avoid this. All right, let's go ahead and do it. And neither one of those places are good. I'm not supposed to be avoiding anything. I'm supposed to be somewhere where I'm working through everything. I don't need to be aggressive. I don't need to be passive, right? Those are healthy things for me to be at a place where I'm neither aggressive or passive. Yes, sir.
What does it mean when you're passive aggressive?
Exactly what it said. And sometimes I come off as being passive, but actually it's an aggressive thing. And when I tell somebody, look, I don't mean to hurt your feelings or anything, but then we tell them something. That's passive aggressive. Stuff like that. So, I need to get to the place where I can be, what's the word? Neither passive nor aggressive. What's the word I'm looking for?
Neutral.
Neutral? No, that ain't it. That's not it. It's going to come to me in a minute. I'll let you know what it is. So, children of alcoholics often take on roles that are not normally expected of kids. Right? Which was, we looked at all of those roles yesterday, and they're not supposed to be. Children are not supposed to be in there. What's the biggest one?
Parent to the children.
Yeah, they're acting like they're the parent, right? Yeah, so that would be the hero. And what happens to kids who grow up and become adults after they've had to been the hero in their family when they're 10, 12 years old?
Missing out on childhood.
Say it again?
Missing out on childhood.
They do, yeah. They miss out of their childhood, and that's not a good thing. Kids ought to be a kid, But one of the things is that morphs into our adulthood. Yeah, I'm growing, and my wife's not going to see this, so I can tell off on her. Her dad was an alcoholic as well. And a bunch of these rules were in place in her home as well. But she was a real stone cold hero. And she kept everything together, did everything in the world, kept everything the way it's supposed to be. And now, today, look, she's she's 70 years old right now. And still, that authoritative thing is with her. It's my way. Yeah. My way or the highway, Bubba. This is how we do it. or you gone. You know, and she's like that. And of course, we've been working through that for 52 years now, but she's still got some of those tendencies in her. And it's almost impossible for her to get that out of there. And it's almost impossible for us to get that out of our lives. So what does that mean? If I can't get that junk out of my life, I'm going to pass it along. I'm almost guaranteeing that all of the issues that I had in my life, my children are going to have those same issues. You know, if you use drugs, it is a much greater chance that your children are also going to use drugs. And if you smoke, it's about a 93% chance that your children will smoke. They probably, if you've got kids over the age of 8 or 9, they probably already are. They've watched you, and okay. You know why they don't show people smoking on television anymore? Because kids saw it and thought it was cool, and they do it too. And so when your kids watch you do it, they think it's not. They may not think it's cool because they don't think you're cool. Don't wake him up. That man just got to sleep well, and you're waking him up. Man, just to ask him a question or tell him something, let him sleep. Good. Lord have mercy. Man don't get no sleep at night. He needs to do that in group. So, and here, look, he supposed to be your friend. Look. Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's like back to this passive aggressive. Like just then, like you're a passive person means like you're a high scared person, right? But you're also aggressive. How you said that? You're like, don't wake him up. You know what I mean? That's how I think.
Yeah. Okay. No one. And he said that he thought I was aggressive because I was picking on him, and that I was passive because I was trying to be nice and all that kind of stuff.
Is that what
But
that means,
here, and then he said that's how he feels. So can I tell him how to feel?
No.
I can tell him what passive aggressive is. I can tell him what aggressive is, but I can't tell him how to feel about that, right?
No.
And see, I can't. Yes, sir.
Am I on the right track there? Like passive means like sarcastic.
Well, we will be doing a study on aggression, passive aggression, and being the way that we're supposed to be. It's not the study we're in today, but passive aggressiveness is when you're saying something that is supposed to come out nice, good, and it comes out in a way that's hurtful. That's passive aggressive. Passive means you're just a doormat. You're laying down. People can walk all over you. People can do anything. And I have known so many of those people in my profession that just let people just walk all over them. Then I've known people that are aggressive. When you look, and aggression shows itself in 1,000 different ways. People fighting, people getting in other people's faces. Is that aggressive? Yeah, that's aggressive. If you have somebody, look, group is at 9 o'clock. And they don't come to group until 9:15, 9:20. Is that aggressive? Yeah, that's aggressive behavior. When they come to group and then they get up out of group and they walk off and they act like they're not paying attention and they walk off into the dining room and they do. Is that aggressive? That can be seen as aggressive behavior. And see, then they ask a question and you explain it and they don't listen, and they're talking to other people and stuff while you're explaining that. Can that be seen as aggressive?
Yes.
That can be seen as aggressive behavior. Sometimes a lot of that aggressive behavior and stuff, we don't recognize it as aggressive. And I've talked to people about not being aggressive, and they say, "Well, I'm not aggressive. That's just the way I am." You're aggressive. That's just the way you are. So, children of alcoholics take on those roles that are not normally expected. And the big deal about it is that role that they pick up as a child, they're going to take that into adulthood. Right? And that's problematic because they have that role in adulthood that makes them act a certain way. Causes them to act a certain way toward other people. Am I aggressive? Sometimes. So are you. Am I assertive? That's the word I was looking for. Am I assertive? All the time. All the time. What does assertive mean?
Straight to the point.
This means that we're going to deal with this situation in a way that's a win for you and a win for me. You ain't going to get it all. I ain't going to take it all. But we're going to know what each other need. If I'm aggressive, I'm going to beat you up. You're going to do it like I say do it. That's aggressive. And you should not be aggressive. We don't need to be aggressive. And we don't need to be passive. Even though we've learned some of these traits in our childhood, we need to be able to recognize them in ourselves and then make changes where they need to be made. So my goal is to be assertive. Yes.
Okay, so I was sleeping during your group one time.
Okay. One time? Just that one time? Okay.
Yeah, because after you were assertive to me in the office, because you called me in the office and you told me, you said, I was looking for a sign sheet. You're like, no, you were sleeping during the group, so you're not going to get signed for the group, so you're not going to get credit for it. That was you being assertive. You know what I mean? You let me know that I'm not going to get credit.
Yeah, and he said, when I tell people that you're not going to get credit for the group, we have 2 people in here today, 3 people that's not going to get credit for the group, and they need to know that. So I'm not being aggressive, I'm not being passive, I'm not being nasty, I'm being assertive. This is how this is going to go. If you want to have credit for the group, wake your butt up. You had all night to sleep, so wake up, come to group. That's what we're here in group for. I'll just soon dismiss you and you can go back to your bed because you're not in group. So this gets reported and goes on up the line. You know, this person slept throughout the group. And so when that person comes and says, hey, I need to have more time here. Oh, no. You got a bed at your house. So that's being assertive. That's not being aggressive. So, but all of those things that we have, if I'm an assertive individual, that's healthy. That's healthy. You really usually don't get that type of trait from your childhood if you grew up with an alcoholic in your family. You usually don't get that. You're going to come out of that as being hyper aggressive, right? And you're going to come out of that, or you're going to come out of that as being really, really passive. Neither one of those places are good for you. And neither one of those places do you want to hand down to your children, right? You don't want to hand that down to your children. You want to hand down being assertive, because assertive is healthy. You know, you don't want to be the person there that never, ever is going to stand up for yourself. You need to stand up for yourself. And I can stand up for myself without making it bad for you, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be a bad thing for you if I'm assertive about my own needs. I need to see your needs fulfilled, and I need to see my needs fulfilled at the same time. Yes?
Can you grow up as a passive person, but then when you get into adulthood, learn to be an assertive person?
Yes, and this is a really good point, and I think this is the whole point that we are making, is that even though I grew up assertive, I grew up aggressive, or I grew up passive, I can change that behavior into assertive behavior. But where does that begin? How do I get that done? Recognizing it absolutely. I need to know who I am. How do I learn who I look at my own behavior? Look at what's going on. If I'm having some issues with more than 2 or 3 people, and if I'm always finding myself in a conflict with somebody, and if I'm always getting in trouble, and if I'm always getting yelled at and all of that kind of stuff, what does that tell me? I might be a little bit too aggressive. You know, I don't let aggressive people around me much. You know, I have to deal with that in my other role as an anger therapist. I have to deal with that a lot. But I will tell you this, that at some point you either change or you change your location, because I'm just not going to do that because that's dangerous. You know, and the other one is the passiveness, where you'll let anybody do anything. That's kind of like the lost child. Remember yesterday? That's kind of like, you know, you're going to be doing whatever they want you to do. And I've had people in my life when I say, okay, what would you like? Whatever you want to do. Whatever. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the answer to your question is yes. We can change those traits in our lives, but we have to first, like you said, recognize who we are. Recognize which one of those traits we're operating in. And if I'm operating as an aggressor, that's a real dangerous place for me to be, and I need to recognize that. The best way that I can do that is look at myself. The other way that I can do it, and a really good way, is to ask my friend. If as an aggressor, you're not going to have a lot of friends. You're not going to have a lot of friends if you're an aggressor. But those people who will still talk to you, ask them. Do I seem to be an aggressor? Am I way too pushy? Am I doing things that I shouldn't do? Or am I way passive? Am I allowing people to run over me? And they will tell you yes.
Okay, so what if I'm dealing with an aggressive person and I'm an assertive person and I'm trying to tell you, like say this dude is an aggressive person, and I'm like, hey bro, you need to wake up because it's time for group. And he pops off, man, fuck you, bro, you know what I'm saying? And then we get into argument. All I'm trying to do is be assertive, let him know that you can't sleep during group. But he's an aggressive person and he pops off to me. How would I deal with that?
Well, what's an assertive person going to do if somebody pops off at you? What's an assertive person going to do if you're talking to somebody who happens to be an aggressive person?
Walk away.
You can walk away because what you just described was not an assertive person. What you just described was an aggressor talking to an aggressor, lying to himself that he's an assertive person. I'm just trying to help. Now get your butt up. I'm just trying to help. What did you say to me? I'm just trying to help you. That's being an assertive person. That's not assertive. That's being aggressive. So if I can go in there and I can lie to myself and everybody else, I'm just trying to be assertive. Learn what it is before you try to do it. First thing is, if that person's not bothering me, it's not my business that he's not getting good, is it? It's not my business to wake him up, is it? It's not my business to make sure he gets his treatment. That's his business. It's my treatment. It ain't your treatment. Leave it alone. And so if you feel like you have to interject yourself into my treatment, then that's aggressive. So you are an aggressive person. And I've seen some aggressive. So look, everybody here has some of each one of those traits. Sometimes we're going to be aggressive. Sometimes we're going to be passive. Sometimes we're going to be assertive. We need to work toward being more assertive than either of the other two. Now, real quickly, let's just understand that that's not the point today. That's not what we're studying. That's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is how those traits get engrafted into us by alcoholic or addict parents, and how we can also put those on to our children. So we need to know that whichever one of those traits, and what trait do I want to be? What trait do I want to have in my life more than the other two?
Assertive.
I want to be assertive. And look, can I be aggressive? Yeah. Yes, I can be aggressive. I really don't want to be aggressive. I want to be assertive. Some people force you to be aggressive. I'm not usually ever passive, but can I be? Yeah, we're going to have a clinical meeting in here in just a moment, and we're going to have all the clinicians, and we're all going to be talking about, clinical stuff, and my boss is going to be in there. Am I going to be passive as she speaks? Yeah. Yeah. I'm supposed to be. But I've had to learn how to do that because I was aggressive growing up. I wasn't passive. Well, I've learned some things. So here these kids, they act as a caregiver.
Hey guys, should push.
Certainly.
Hey, like, check this out. I know it's never too late, but like say, man, I got kids. Well, I got boys, 21 and finna be 19. I know it's never late, but sometimes a child not a child, but a man don't want, can't change like that. Like say, for instance, if I start doing right now, doing the right thing right now, they show love, or that's something you don't know.
Well, and here's the thing: is see, out of group. That's aggressive action. That's aggressive behavior. But here's the deal. When is it too late to begin to show proper behavior to your children? It ain't never too late. If you look, I'm 71 years old. It's not too late for me to start doing the right thing, even if it doesn't change my kid. And it may not. You've already done what you've done, right? You've already got them where you've got them. And you may not change them, but it is very, very, very important for them to see in you the possibility of change.
That's what he was basically saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's thinking that as kids, he could change his kids.
No, you can't change them, but here's the deal, because it's already a bit late, but if they can look at you and see the possibility of a grown adult man changing, then they may be able to do that as well.
Cause see, this is another thing. Hey, my kids are very, they don't like, they see the dad, me, and the wife drinks and stuff. We went to work, but they don't, you know what I'm saying? They don't smoke cigarettes, you know what I'm saying? They do the opposite of what we do.
Some children do that, and those are those great big outliers. Some children are like that, and that happens, and that's a praise God thing, but that doesn't happen very often. 99.9% of the time, they're going to do exactly what you do. Sometimes they see that, and then they move from it. They say, I'm never going to do that. I saw my dad do it. And I've talked to a bunch of people. I've never seen, I saw my dad be an alcoholic. I saw my mom be an alcoholic, and I'm never going to do those things. So, sometimes it happens like that, and that's good stuff, but most of the time it doesn't. So, they may act as caregivers for young. That's like there being somebody said, and I think it was you, said that these kids are acting like the parents. They're a mediator or scapegoat or another age inappropriate level. As a child, what role do you think you should have in the family? As a kid, what role should you have in the family? As a child, you should be a child. You should be able to play. And I gave the example yesterday, but I only have 3, so I have to keep giving them over and over again. I went to the O'Reillys, and they had a 12-year-old try to come out and take my order. No business doing that. She had no business doing that whatsoever. We went to a burger barn there in some little town around here, and we're getting a hamburger. Somebody told us that was the best hamburgers in town, and they are good hamburgers there, but we don't go back. They had like a 12-year-old in the kitchen working, and what will 12-year-olds do? Pick their nose, scratch their butt, and then touch my food? No, that ain't gonna happen.
Maybe their mom and dad are trying to teach good work ethic.
All right. Yes, and that's what you should do. Yeah. As a child, those roles and those roles are impacted. Whatever role you played when you were a kid, they are affecting you now, either positively or negatively. Like you were talking about earlier, somebody being assertive, that's a positive thing. And if you received that role as a child, you grew up being positive, that's a positive thing that you got in your life. Negative is drinking, using drugs, setting all of those things up for people in your life, and that's really not a good thing. So it's going to affect you one way or another, either negatively or positively. But what we need to get out of this class, if we can move past, this is number 2 out of 30, but if we can move past that one point, those things are going to affect us. I have so many people tell me, well, this is my life. I can do what I need, but I can do what I want to because this is my life. It's not affecting anybody else. That's a crock. That's not true. You're affecting everybody else around with all of your behavior. Every bit of your behavior, you're affecting. The fact that we can't sit still for 1 hour. But we're up and we're out and we're getting something else to eat and we're doing this and we're going to the bathroom and we're walking down the hallway just to see who's down the hallway and we're walking back over this way, set that door all open and we're doing all of you think that doesn't disrupt everybody in the group? It's not just you. It is never just you. You've disrupted everybody in the group when you got up and gone to do something except for the people who are dead asleep. Those folks, you didn't disrupt this guy because he's asleep. You did wake up some people, but so it does affect us. This is what we need to know is that we are not in this world by ourselves. This isn't Mars. We're still on the planet Earth, and our actions now affect us and affect our kids. If you whatever you're doing, your children are taking note of that. So, third thing, our childhoods influence how we relate to others throughout our lives. So here's the deal. If our childhood relates to how we relate to other people or affects how we relate to other people, can I do something about it? Sure. And again, it comes down to being able to recognize that I do have that issue. It comes down to me recognizing that I am influencing other people, either positively or negatively. I am influencing other people. Whatever you do influences other people. People see what you do, and if you get by with what you do, they do that too. And if you learned it from a child, then that's what's part of being an adult child of an alcoholic. Because 90% of the time, that's not normal behavior that goes on. They're not teaching you normal rules. Now, when my dad used to tell me all the time, that children should be seen and not heard. Does that make sense?
No.
Well, I do believe that children should be respectful, right? Should be respectful. Absolutely. I'm 71 years old, and I have less and less opportunities to run into people who are my senior, right? But when I do run into somebody who's my senior, I give deference to those people. They've lived longer than me. They know more than me. I'm going to learn from those. I'm going to listen for a few minutes and say, hey, you know what? You can learn from anybody, but you can learn for sure from somebody who's already done that. Somebody's already. So they should, when they're 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, they should be respectful. They should listen when an adult speaks. They should do. But they should never be at a place where when it's appropriate, they are afraid to say something.
Yeah.
They're afraid to make you angry. They're afraid to hurt your feelings. They're afraid to get you mad at them and cause issues. They're afraid of conflict with the person who has the addiction. Because, like I said yesterday, when my dad got angry, he threw food. And we didn't have food to throw. Around my house, you didn't throw no food. If you threw it, let me open my mouth first. Don't be throwing stuff. But that's how he reacted. So we learned we don't have any conflict. We don't say anything about anything. You know what was said when my dad threw all those beans against the wall?
Clean that up.
And nobody said anything. He was cussing and yelling. Mama was standing over by the stove, away from everything. My little brother and I were just sitting at the table. We kept our mouths shut because we were afraid. And then he got up and when he stormed out of the house to go to the bar and spend the last $3 we had to our name, then Mom started getting the beans back. But we didn't say anything. That stuff can morph into your adulthood if you don't get to the place where first you recognize that's what I'm doing. It's not because I have to go to the bathroom. It's not because I have to do this. It's not because I absolutely have to do. It's because I want to be recognized. I want to be in the center. I want to do something. Nobody can tell me not to. It's that aggressive thing, and that aggressive thing came from my childhood. Usually, I'm held down so that I can't be aggressive. I have to be passive so that when I become an adult, I become passive. Even if it's not getting in your face, beating you up, and all of that stuff, and it's doing stuff to make sure that people know you're different, you're special. All of that comes from that. And so we just need to recognize where all that comes from. And then if we want to change it, we can change it to where we're assertive. Assertive is different. Assertive is respectful. Assertive, it means I'm going to come to group, and I'm just using this as an example. I'm not picking on anybody, but I'm coming to group and I'm going to get there on time. Because when you're late all the time, anybody know anybody who's habitually late? I mean, they're late to everything they ever go to. They're late to work. They're late to their appointments. They're late for. You know anybody like that?
You ever heard the expression?
Late. Some of them probably be late to their own funeral. What do you think that's about? Why are they late for everything? I had a girl that worked for me one time. She was 15 minutes late every day. Every day. I yelled at her, talked to her, wrote her up. She's still 15 minutes late. So, I gave her back. She didn't have any structure, but I pushed her time up by 30 minutes, okay? She's supposed to be at work at 6 in the morning. She would never get there till 6:30. So I said, okay, now your time to be at work is 6:30. So you be here at 6:30. Okay, thank you. Oh, that's great. I can take my kids to everything is wonderful. That worked for about a week, and then guess what? She's coming to work at 6:45. 15 minutes late. So, hey, we changed it, and she couldn't do it. She just couldn't do it. What do you think her? Most people who are habitually late for everything in their lives have an issue with hidden anger. They may not even know they're angry about it themselves, but they are lashing out at anybody, and they're lashing out at their employer. They're lashing out at their doctor. They're lashing out at their school people. They're lashing out at the group. You know? So people who are late for group, every time we have group, I want to sit them down and say, what you mad about? Oh, I'm not mad about it. Yes, you are. Yes, I'm going on. All right, so our childhood influence, that's going to relate to us and to others throughout our whole life. And we can, like he was talking about earlier, we can't change that. But the very first thing that we have to do in order to work toward changing some of those things in our lives is to realize which one of those we are. I'm shooting toward being assertive. I want to be assertive in everything. If I'm aggressive, is that going to be good for me and good for you?
Yes.
No, aggression is never going to be good for me and good for you. Aggression is look, it's my way and no other way. It's me. I'm the only one that matters. That's aggression. Passivity, being passive, you're the only one that matters. I don't matter. Doesn't make any difference what I want. Everything is about you. So either everything is about me, which is aggression, or everything is about you, which is passivity. Neither one of those works. Being assertive, both of us get what we get our needs met. If I'm assertive, then I'm going to get my needs met, and you're going to get. I don't want to meet all your needs if my needs don't get met, right? I don't want to meet all my needs if your needs don't get met. So I want both of us to have our needs met. So assertive behavior is good. Aggressive behavior is not. So, all right. Real quickly, we're going to run along. We don't have a whole lot of time to do this next one, but we'll do this, and then we'll get back maybe to it after the break. But because alcoholic caregivers are often absent, and us, as alcoholics and addicts, we are often absent, even if we're there. I've had people tell me, now I go to work every day, man. I go home, and I'm there with my cheering every day, and I do what I'm supposed to do. I'm one of them functional alcoholics, right? I'm one of those kind of people. So But you can either be absent physically or emotionally. So if a lot of people, alcohol, things happen, we go to jail, right? The police don't like us at all, not at all, and so we're gonna go to jail. And they're gonna come get you since you done bust yourself up, all that kind of stuff. They're gonna tase you first. And if the police call me and say, "Hey, we're gonna go get him," I say, "All right, tase him first." Yeah, because we don't need anybody hurt. Just tase him, knock him down. So those things are going to happen. We're going to be physically not there more than somebody who's not using drugs or alcohol, right? More than somebody not using drugs or alcohol. If somebody has a family and they're not using drugs or alcohol, they're not liable to go to jail because they're not using drugs or alcohol. Now, I was talking to a guy in the Anahuac jail, and I asked him, I'm sitting up there in Anahuac jail because I got DWI, so I'm sitting up in the DWI place, and there's 10 or 12 people in there. And I asked this guy sitting next to me, I said, "Why are you in here, man?" That's not what you ask people when you're in jail. You don't do that. If somebody will tell you why they're there, they will, but you don't ask them. So he said, "For singing too loud choir." So okay. So I knew you stepped on something there, but you don't go to jail for singing too loud in the choir, do you? No, you go to jail for this, that, and the other. My dad went to jail just about every time he'd get out, he'd be looking for another place to go. We had a place in Mississippi called the County Road. Y'all ever heard of that? That's just kind of like county jail, but they would link them all together with a chain, make them clean the side of the highway and stuff. Way back then, I don't know if they can still do that or not now, but they had a long bunkhouse type of thing where all of these people would stay in, whoever was on the county road. And then they had a little bitty tiny house over here, and that was my dad's house. He was an automatic trustee the moment he got picked up. They'd take him to the judge and say, "Okay," and he'd go out there, they'd put him in his little house. That's how often Daddy went to the county road. Okay, there you go. Go back to your house. You're an automatic trustee, and he's out there watching the other guys playing. But they knew him for that. And he was gone more than he was there. So he was gone physically all the time, most of the time. But when he was there, he was gone emotionally. No, he wasn't there. He was there physically at those times, but he wasn't there for us. I couldn't go to my dad and say, "Hey, look, I need to talk to you about girl." He ain't got no idea. Dad, I need to talk to you about this. I need to talk to you about. He wasn't available. Wasn't available.
Dad, I need you to help me with my homework.
Say it again.
Dad, I need you to help me with my homework.
Yeah, Dad, I need you to help me with my homework. Whatever it was, my dad was not available for all of that. I can tell you this. He never one time ever helped me with my homework. He never one time ever helped me with much of anything. I told y'all the thing he told me was to pay my bar bill first. He also told me to keep a little bit of the hair of the dog that bit me. Dad taught me some things about being an alcoholic, and I used them. I used them. I'd keep that much vodka by the bed. So you wake up the next morning, you get a little bit, you drank that. Oh, you okay? You all right? You woke up and nearly fell out your chair, man. I'm sorry. We got a little bit too loud. I apologize.
I appreciate it.
So these guys are either absent one way or another, yes, sir?
How long have you been clean?
How long have I been clean? 26 years.
Damn.
December the 13th, 1999. That sound right? Yeah. That's a long time. December the 13th. On December the 13th, I had a great big old wreck on a completely straight road. Crazy. Wait a minute. So because these guys are either physically, emotionally not there, their children are left to deal with difficult emotions by themselves. You know, when I discovered the opposite sex real early, but there was no one that I could talk to. No touch facility.
I didn't.
Yes, you did. I saw you. Don't do that.
Be a servant, sir.
Yes, I am being served. We have to deal with those emotions by ourselves. In some cases, that leads to the development of unhealthy coping strategies. I cope with things. How do we cope with things if nobody helps us know how to cope with things? Well, Dad did give me some good coping skills. They're called vodka. That was my coping skill. Anytime there was something, if I was afraid, if I was angry, if I was whatever it was, then use of alcohol would help me to cope with it. Anger was another really good coping skill. Because I could do anything, say anything I wanted to because I was angry. And I see people all the time telling me that today. Well, I can't help myself. I'm angry and I can't stop my own. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. We just need to learn that coping skill. We need not to be at a place where we get angry for everything. Yes, sir?
Okay, so when my mom died, she died when I was 8. My dad became a real bad alcoholic. He would drink every day. And so growing up, that's all we do is him get angry.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He slaps around.
Yeah.
And then we start running away from home, so we had to take care of ourselves. And I grew up potentially like you don't reach over people's food, you don't talk over people's food, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, stuff like that. And my dad was never there to teach me that stuff. So now, I don't plan on having kids if I can really take care of myself.
Right.
If I ever do have kids, like that's what I want to teach them. Like I don't want to teach them violence and stuff like that. I want to teach them respect. Say, I don't hold the door for you, hold the door for anybody. Really.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm sorry for interrupting you. It just ran through my mind. Do you see all of that stuff that went into your life, all of the stuff that your dad did, the fact that you lost your mom early and all of that, do you see any of that causing any of the behavior that you find yourself doing now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, me too. We had a great big old wreck when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was 8 years old. And my mom didn't die, but she went to the hospital for a solid year. Her arm was torn nearly off, and she was in the hospital and my dad did exactly the same thing. He didn't know how to take care of kids, so he fed us White Lightning and cigarettes, until Mama finally got back home after a year. And then it was probably another year, 2 years, before she was able actually to take on her role, which was trying to cover for that dipstick and it's funny because they stayed married for like ever. I would, if I was a young lady and guy no, I wouldn't stay with that.
Hey, you mentioned the Doors the other day. So the Doors brought back, remember the Doors, first time I ever smoked a cigarette too.
Oh.
Right on through to the wild side, first time I ever smoked a cigarette.
All right, so look, we're going to take a break, and I'm not going to give you the name of the person who made us late, but everybody in here knows who it is. So let's take a 15-minute break. We'll get back about 20 minutes after, and we'll finish it up. Thank you. Yeah, I like the Doors. That one's not my favorite song.
I agree.
Woke up. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the disappointment on your face. I was like, yeah. But I knew better.
It's the board. Going on break? Okay. Fuck it is.
How many homes currently?
The interstate.
All right, Mr. Gibson.
Real quiet.
Right.
It's crazy shit going on here.
Well, yeah, definitely. You guys don't have it.
So man, when your last day, man? When your last day? Sunday. Sunday? Not Monday? Okay.
Kim, is my uncle.
You gotta go clean. What time you leave, bro? Like 11:30. I'm gonna get down to something good too. I don't want to drink one day at a time. Remember? How far is Killeen from? How far is Killeen? 4 hours and a half. It's close to Tyler and Luffy. I ain't no been to Killeen. I had. How long you been down there? A year. That was the best way, man. I'm glad you know what I'm saying. Cross paths. Hey,
We ain't gotta come back.
I won't. I don't even like Teddy, but I'd like to come back here and visit. I'm gonna be down there. Huh? I'm gonna be down there. Lord bless you.
You all right?
What you gonna do for the holidays?
I don't know.
I think out of the house.
Well, I was planning on being up here, but now I've just learned that I don't have to be here.
I think we're gonna have a little barbecue. You come by.
Yeah, y'all gonna have some barbecue up here?
I think so for lunch.
You should. You should.
Yeah, you should. I'll be
I
here.
don't know, whatever my wife wants to do, if I got a day off for me.
Think we'll off for dinner or something.
Oh,
Maybe go for a little road trip.
I like going out.
Or ride along the beach or something.
Yeah, we just went down there the other day, but we may, if I don't have to work tomorrow, man, I'm gonna take off, spend a night somewhere.
Away from home for a little while.
Yeah, it's a big old husky dog.
They don't like the food, though.
No,
The husky dogs like
Yeah, supposed to be the closest to a wolf, and it's not going anywhere in the world now.
Yeah.
She's not going nowhere with that.
Sir?
She's not going nowhere with that.
No, we bought a 30-foot travel trailer just because.
We got go somewhere.
Yeah, just so we can take that dog with us everywhere we go. Been a bit of a, you can't do something like go to Hawaii or anything like that.
So they,
You have to shoot a dog. He's a good dog.
Yeah. Dogs. Say dogs are what man's best friend.
Not a man, but he's one of the
Oh yeah, that's cute. Cute dog.
big.
They got those and they got the silver and black ones too, don't they? Yeah. It's nice dog.
That's where we go.
Is it the back of your house?
Well, this is Dakota State Park.
Oh, it's a nice park. Yeah.
This supposed to be a water.
Just drive it.
Yeah. So we're going to go back over there in October. This is October 23.
They got a sightseeing or something like that. At the dam. They got a big old cliff and they got a sightseeing.
And then Woodville, I've been to Woodville, but I've not seen much of anything here. I like
They got a
that.
nice little cliff. They got a walk. They got a nice walk. It's not as nice as that, but it's a sightseeing site.
Yeah. I might look into that. Does it have a name?
It's right there at the dam. Woodview Dam.
Yeah. Yeah, I know where that is.
It's right off the highway.
If you go to Woodville and go that way,
You just take it right
you
through.
go, that's where you go to Jasper going that way.
Yeah.
Between Jasper and Woodville is Martin Dice State Park.
Okay.
That's a pretty nice little state park. We've stayed there a couple of times. I took a youth group up there. But that's a pretty nice little park.
They got all the hills and stuff.
Yeah, it's nice up there. I would like to move up there. I like it up there.
I'll wait for everybody.
Well, my wife's not gonna move.
Well, you know, she went to go along with you.
Yeah.
Hey, you say Bread City. We went to Bread City one time. We played a long time for the high school.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Well, Bridge City's okay. It's got a couple of places in there. Not really any good. In Orange, Bridge City, in that area, there's no real good places to eat. And, we have to come back to Beaumont. There's a couple places, there's Cheddar.
But it was nice at the airport.
Yeah, it's nice over there. It's right over the water. And if you go out your back door and spit, and land from Louisiana, so that's we have people come to our church from Louisiana. Our men's minister comes from Louisiana, Starks, Louisiana. Well, it's about time to get this thing started back. We're going to get out of here really well. One of the things I have just learned, and I told you guys I would share the information with you and let you know what's happening. We won't be having a group. Now, tomorrow we're going to be on a holiday schedule, and I'm not sure what group you're going to be having, but my boss just told me that it's not necessary for me to be here tomorrow, so I'm not going to be here tomorrow. So, I know that's tearing some people up. I know. But this is one of those things that help you practice coping skills. Just going to have to cope with the fact that I ain't going to be here tomorrow. But we're going to finish up this on the adult children of alcoholics and get that done pretty quickly. So when these guys are they're either physically or emotionally not there, they're just absent. Their children are left to deal with difficult situations and emotions and stuff like that by themselves, and they come up with their own coping skills. Let me tell you something. If you give a kid the opportunity to come up with their own coping skills, what are they going to do? They're going to go for the first shiny thing, right? The kids are going to go for the first thing that rings a bell. They're going to be doing the first thing that they, and a lot of the times, what is that?
What they want to do.
A what?
What they want to do.
What they want to do. And look, we talked about arrested identity development yesterday a little bit. Arrested identity development means that my maturity level stopped at 12 years old. So as an adult child, I'm still doing the same thing. Still doing exactly what I want to do. So kids back then are going, when they're growing up, they're going to go and go for that one thing that they think is going to give them a whole lot of pleasure and fun and all of that stuff. That means I'm going to get me a little motorcycle. I'm going to get this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to use drugs. I'm going to use alcohol. I'm going to do those things that I feel like is going to make, and so there's no adult there that says, look, you don't see me smoking cigarettes, so you know you shouldn't do it, right? And you don't see me using alcohol, so you know that helps you know that you shouldn't do it. They don't have an adult figure there that's saying, this behavior is unacceptable. So, if I don't have an authority figure telling me when I'm 10 years old that behavior is unacceptable, then when I get to this age, when I get to when I'm 30, 40, 50 years old, then I'm at that place where nobody can tell me that my behavior is unacceptable. I have to get to the place where I realize that this is what's going on. I got this behavior. I learned this behavior from my dad. I learned this behavior from my mother. I learned this behavior from somebody else in my family or in my sphere of influence when I was a kid, and I've allowed it to come on and flavor the rest of my life. So, if it is flavoring the rest of my life, and I am having bad behavior, I'm getting drunk every weekend, I'm getting drunk every day, I'm doing crazy, crappy stuff all of the time, then I need to do what?
Change your behavior.
Change your behavior. The first thing, change your belief system, change your, that's a good point. Change your behavior. The very first thing I have to do is recognize, like he said, recognize that my behavior is inappropriate. If I've grown up with this and that's the way that it's always been, and I believe in my belief system that this is the way a man ought to react, then it's pretty hard for me to do anything about it unless I get to the place where I realize this ain't the right thing to do. I have to, every now and then, where do you start? How do you start? And I'm sure y'all probably seen it on the TED stuff, but there's that, the Captain so-and-so, I can't remember who he is, in Naval Captain. He said, look, if you want to have a good life, if you want to be successful in life, make your bed. So what's he saying? Make your bed. Okay, when I was in the military, we had to make our beds so that they were, you'd throw a quarter on them and the quarter would bounce. So it had to be that if the quarter didn't bounce, you had to remake your bed. And they didn't just make your bed like you do here. They tear them all apart, throw them all down. There's nothing left. Now go make your bed. Make it right. So this captain is saying, make your bed. What's that mean? It is a good idea to make your bed. But here's the deal. He wasn't talking about making your bed. He's talking about taking care of the small things first. Look at the little things. If your whole life is messed up because of something that happened when you were a kid, take a look around you right now and do one small thing right. We've been beating on group a little bit, but let's continue that theme. Go to group on time. Stay awake in group. Just do one thing. What if I can't stay awake in group? Stand up. Go stand up on the wall, right? At least when you go to sleep and you fall over in the floor, you'll be entertaining to the rest of them. Right? Right? Just look, you have to start with the little stuff. You're not going to be able to change everything that your parents have inflicted on you in one fell swoop. you're going to have to change it one little bit at a time. All right? We have to do that. So we can find that one little thing and change one little thing, then what happens?
You start to say another.
Yeah, you start looking for the next one. If I can change that, if I can be in group on time for the rest of the week, for all of next week, I can be in group on time. That could change your life. It could change your life. Just like if I can make my bed, like that captain was talking about, if I can make my bed, and if I can do it correctly, if I can do it right, do it with a little bit of pride, then I'm going to tell you what, that's going to change my life. It'll change my attitude, and it'll change my life. Because what happened to me as a child has morphed into my adulthood, and it is affecting my life. So, because alcoholic caregivers, despite, wait a minute, in some cases that leads to a development of unhealthy coping strategies, such as avoidance. What is avoidance?
Stay away from us.
Yeah, and this is one of those things about being passive. I'm just not going to deal with it. You ever done that? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I just don't want to deal with that. I don't want to talk to that girl about it. You know, I'm real good at avoiding things. When somebody tells me, you have to go do this. Okay. The worst thing somebody can tell me is you have to do something about that. What does that tell me?
Somebody tell you what to do.
Well, somewhere down through the years, somewhere down 20, 30 years ago, someone taught me that doing nothing is an action. So my boss says, hey, that has to be actionable. You have to go do something. Okay, so I go out of their office. I say, okay, what I'm going to do is nothing. Because doing nothing is an action. Right? Now, actually doing nothing is a cop-out. Right? Because I'm not I'm looking at it as an action, but it's not an action. It's just doing nothing. So what is that? Avoidance. So when I'm growing up, my dad didn't let me talk. My mom was afraid to talk to me. All of these things. Nobody taught me anything. But I learned that in order to not get punched in the face, in order to not get slapped upside the head, in order to not get beat with a belt buckle, I just needed not to say anything. I just avoided anything. Yeah. And so I went to, I was pretty fast because when I was a kid, people used to beat me up and stuff like that. And so, I could run pretty fast. So the coach finally figured that out. He put me on the track team, but I got kicked off the track team because
you could run like Forrest, huh?
Well, I could run like Forrest, but I didn't have any tennis shoes, and so they had to get a special permission for me to run on the track team with no shoes, barefooted, because we didn't have money to buy me shoes. And I didn't have, I avoided going to talk to my dad about needing some track shoes. So I ran. You know what those tracks are made out of? Asphalt. Back in Mississippi, they were made out of asphalt. You know how many races I could run? I could run as many as my feet would allow. That asphalt would tear your feet up. When you're running on it, it's hot, and it's like little bitty tiny rocks, and it will tear your feet up. And when you get home, the bottom of your feet are all, So pretty soon, my coach said, well, you can't run for us anymore. I was still willing to run, but he said, no, man, you're going to cripple yourself. So, but I was practicing avoidance. I didn't want to go to my dad and say, hey, look, back then, it was about $5. I need a $5 pair of shoes. He would have beat the snot out of me. He would have yelled at me. He'd have thrown something at me. You know how much booze you can buy with $5? And you know what's more important? My shoes, my health of my feet, or my dad's boots? What's the most important thing? In his life, it was the boots. And let me tell you why Miss Kim's out here. Well, that don't work. So I'm not going to tell you that. So, you know, we wind up as a child, you know, you have to cope with the caregiver's alcohol use. So how did I cope with that? Just avoiding having to cope with it. So here's some good stuff. There are some good things. There are some good things we can look at growing up with that situation. You know, I mean, they're far and few between, and you have to look real close at what the good things in that situation are. But if you're resilient, if you're smart, if you really want to, you can find some good things in just about everything. So in this situation, despite a difficult upbringing, adult children of alcoholics may find that they have developed tremendous strength and resilience. What does resilience mean?
The ability to bounce back or persevere.
Say it again.
The ability to bounce back or persevere.
Yeah, the ability to bounce back or persevere. That's just well said. I'm resilient. It's hard to beat me down and keep me down. You know, I've had life try to do that on several occasions, but I've gotten back up. You know, and we learn to be resilient by the fact that we have to be resilient growing up. You know, when your caregiver is an alcoholic, you're going to have to do a lot of those things on your own, and you learn that even though things get messed up like that, you can be resilient and you can get back to doing things. I couldn't run on those asphalt tracks anymore. So, you know, I got kicked off that team. And guess what? We had another team that did not go. Those guys went all the way to state. They went and did all of these other kinds of stuff. But there was another group that just went to the area schools. And they ran on dirt tracks. So I could be on that team. And I did. So I was resilient. I ran on that too. Can you get your feet hurt running on a dirt track? Yes, because they've got rocks and sticks and bumps and holes. And I did. I got my feet hurt doing all of that too, but I could still run on those tracks. And I did run on those tracks. And I did pretty well doing that, running on a dirt track. But it all came from being resilient, being able to get past all of the mess and keep going. So do we need that in our recovery? Do we need to be resilient in our recovery? We do, you know, because while we're in our recovery, it's not going to be all, you know, peaches and cream. You're going to get knocked down every now and then in your recovery. But we need to do what? Step up, keep going. We need to be resilient. We need to be, you know, we don't need to be those folks who give up easily. Every time we give up, what do? We relapse, we come right back, all of those things. So we don't need to be giving up, you know, all that quick. So we need to be resilient. We need to be able to continue on. We need to be the people who are strong. So just to have a little strength, just to have a little resilience, helps us a lot. So, you know, we learn a lot when we grow up in that kind of childhood that can be very, very valuable to us at this point. Right? We do. And one of the things we were talking about, you know, to ad nauseum, we were talking about, you know, my personality. Am I aggressive? And am I passive? What's the other one?
Aggressive.
No. Am I aggressive? Am I passive? What's the third?
Assertive.
Assertive. Which one of those? Which one of those am I?
You're assertive.
And where did that come from? Yeah, we want to be. We all want to be assertive. And so I'm looking at all of that from my childhood. I've learned from my childhood which one of those I am. And now I need to fix it so that I can be the one that I want to be. I want to be an assertive individual. There's no way on earth I'm going to be a passive individual. No way on earth I'm going to be an aggressive individual. So I'm looking at the things that happened in my life. There was a lot of aggression there. There was some passivity there. My mother was totally passive. My dad was totally aggressive. And in the middle, there I am and my little brother watching my dad beat my mom, learning exactly how to beat a woman without causing a lot of bruises so that the police, when they come, are going to be able to point it out. They're not going to be able to see that. See, that's the kind of stuff we were learning. And as we went on forward, we got into our adult life, we figured out that's not the behavior that a man should ascribe to be, aspire to be. That's not what we should be wanting to do in our life. So instead of that aggressiveness, we want to make sure that we're not in that aggressive situation. And also, we don't want to be in that passive situation because I'm not going to be that person. You ain't beating on me. I'm not going to beat on you, but you ain't beating on me. Don't want to be assertive. I'll let you know that's not acceptable. Right? I'll let you know that that action, that behavior in my life, that's not acceptable. You know, and I never want to be aggressive, but if you want to try that behavior in my life, I will have to let you know how that is not acceptable. Right? So it's what? It's advantageous for me and for you. So I've learned some of those things growing up through my life, and we've all learned great things that we can use in our recovery and use in our lives to make our lives where we want our lives to be. Because one of the things that we've learned down through the years is that everybody wants to be in a little bit better place. They did this thing with people who won the lottery. And some of these people won hundreds of millions of dollars, and other people won tens of millions of dollars. And they went and talked to them and asked them, what is it that you need more? What would you like to have now? What did they say? Anybody got an idea? What do you think all those multimillionaires want? More money. More money. The guy that won $470 million if he had just little. The guy that won $12 million if he'd had 15. Yeah, how crazy. Yeah. When the lottery first came out, all of us guys that we worked all at this one place, we all took up, we all bought tickets. And we were talking about, if we win the lottery, what are you going to do? And this guy said, well, if I win the lottery, I'm going to buy me a lawnmower shop. A what? He said, yeah, man, I'm going to buy my own lawnmower shop. I'll have my own lawnmower. I said, dude, if I win $12 million, right, I'm not even going to talk to people who know people who have lawnmowers. I'm not now. A lawnmower shop. Okay. So anyway, despite that, we're going to do some stuff. There's some great things that we can learn. We do have strengths. Here's the deal. When I was a kid, we built in some strengths because when I was a kid, life beat me down a lot. When I was growing up, we didn't have stuff to eat. When it was time to pay the rent, what did we do? We moved. Yeah, we moved. We got the heck out of there. And I'm serious. We'd go, and there were times when we didn't have money to rent. What would we do? If you can't rent a place or buy a place. And in my life, back in Mississippi when I was a kid, we did what you call squatting. What's squatting? Yeah, go find somebody's house that doesn't have anybody in it. Usually there was no furniture at all, so we just go in there and sleep in one of the empty rooms. And then when the sun came up, we got out. And then we'd come back that night, or we'd go somewhere else, in the neighborhoods that we lived in. There was a lot of those old abandoned houses, and we'd go do kind of stuff like that. So we learned how to survive, and it was always with my mom. Dad was in jail, so mom taught us how to survive, and we did do that. We survived. We became. Look, I'm an adult now. I got almost $20 in my car. I think I don't go fooling with my car, but almost $20. Yeah. When I was a kid, $20 was so much money. I remember when I was about 13 years old, I was thinking, I'm gonna get me some kind of job, and if I could just make $20 a week. People make an hour, but I wanted to make a week. So we learned how to have some strength and how to do some stuff. As an adult, if you had an opportunity, what would you say to a current child of an alcoholic? And some of us in here are children of alcoholics. Yes?
If I was a child, or if I met a child, are you saying if I met a child, their parent was an alcoholic, what would I say to them?
Yeah, if you, look, no, let me read it again to you. What would you say to a current child of an alcoholic?
Well,
Get them, get your, get yourself out, get your parents help.
You gotta get your parents some help. That's good. If you're talking to a kid who's still a kid, there's limited things that you can do. There's limited things that you can do.
I would let them know that whatever they go through growing up, that it doesn't make them a bad kid.
That's a good point. He said, whatever they're going through, whatever your parents are putting you through, whatever is happening, that doesn't make you bad. That doesn't make you a bad person. You don't have to be aggressive or passive. You don't have to be any of those things you shouldn't be, because that's not you. And you don't have to be whatever that person is. So, what would you say to an adult child of an alcoholic? What would you say to someone who's an adult now, but their parents were out?
Find your own place to live.
Find your own place to live. That's a good one. One of the things I think that I would say to an adult, and I've said this, and I'm saying it to you, is take a look at your own behavior. Take a look at the behavior that you are involved in. Take a look at the behavior that you are doing right now and see if that behavior is advantageous for you. Is that behavior good for you? Is that behavior bringing you some rewards? Is that behavior what you want it to be in your life? If you want to do those kinds of things, okay. But if you need to, want to, desire to, think that it might be advantageous for you to change those behaviors, then here's what you do. Change those behaviors. You figure out which ones are aggressive, which ones are passive, and you change them, head them toward being an assertive individual. Try to figure out how to do things that's going to be advantageous for me and for the other person.
So this brings me back to the last class. That comment that I made was really about me. Like me growing up, I was really like the doorman.
Yeah.
But now I'm growing up to learn how to be assertive, tell people like no and stuff like that. I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. I mean, and so I'm learning to be more assertive with myself and with others. But I'm also really aggressive. You know what I'm saying? Like I can come off as an person.
Yeah. You can. The statement you just made was aggressive.
How's that aggressive?
Well, as opposed to being assertive. You made the statement, if I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. I got up this morning, I didn't feel well, I didn't want to go to work, I went.
Angry.
Yeah, that's anger, that's aggressive, no matter what it is. Okay, yeah. There's a lot of things in an adult's life, in a grown person's life, if, that they're going to have to do stuff all through the day that they don't want to do. When I go home today, I'm going to be heading out this highway, and the speed limit's 65. I want to do 85. I want to go home, but I don't want to do 65. Guess what I'm going to do? 65. So there's a lot of things I am going to do, and that's assertive. Being aggressive is saying, I don't care what to do. I'm not going to do it. But see, that's not true, because you will. Because if you decide you're not going to do it, there are people in society, a lot of them have guns and badges that will help you make your mind up to do it. But that's not where we want to go. So, and I know what you were talking about. You didn't mean, but I use that as an opportunity to go and make that statement. I'm not saying that's exactly how you are. I'm saying that statement can be that. We need to be able to look at all of those things and see which one of them might be aggressive. And if we can, we need to get that aggressive behavior out. See, just walking out of the group like that, is that aggressive? Absolutely, that's aggressive behavior. And that's going to be addressed. Aggressive behavior is what? Aggressive behavior always demands addressing. You can't be aggressive and not have that. You can't have an aggressive issue. You can't have an aggressive moment without someone somewhere addressing it. It just demands to be addressed. And it has to be. So it will be. Passivity, is that always addressed? If you're passive, you're just a doormat, is that always addressed? It's addressed sometimes, but it's not always addressed because you're quiet, you're hidden, you're somewhere people are not going to know that you're there. People are not going to they're not going to be addressing your behavior because they don't care for it. They don't care about it. It's not something that's going to cause them or anyone else an issue if you don't get it, if you don't want it, if you stay there. It needs to be addressed. And I try to look at people and know that they have passive tendencies, and I want to pull them up out of that. So in group, that would be somebody who sleeps all the time, or somebody who's just quiet all the time, somebody who never engages in group all the time. Those people are a bit passive, and I want to talk to those folks and say, hey, look, we need to pull you out, we need to get in group, we need to be engaged, we need to talk. Especially if you've been here. Now, if you've been here 2-3 days, okay. But if you've been here 2-3 months, we need to talk. You need to change those things. So aggressiveness is always going to be addressed. But once you become an adult, because the things that you can do at 10 years old or 12 years old, you can't do that when you're 35 or 40. You can't. You can just say things, do things, act a certain way when you're 12 years old. But when you get 45 years old, you're not going to do that. Society's not going to allow it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to allow it. So, as an adult, there are feelings that we're going to have now that we see that comes from whatever that was back then. And that's okay because, look, that's the reality that we have, right? That's the reality that we have. So what do we have now? This is the reality that we're living in right now. And whatever that was back there that brought me to the place I am right now, I don't want to move that along to my children. Then I have to do something about it. Right? Okay. Last thing, and we're going to be done with this real quickly. In many households, as an alcoholic caregiver, the topic of drinking or drinking too much is off limits. That leaves children with unanswered questions, misconceptions about alcohol or drugs. As a child, we build up beliefs about alcohol and drugs when we see what's going on with our parents. Here's the deal. If we use, then we're going to be at a place where our children believe that that's okay. It's an okay. And you know, for a lot of people out there, it is. But it's not okay for us. So we need to get to the place where we understand that whatever we are bringing in from our childhood, we are taking it forward into their childhood, and they're going to take it to wherever they're going. Yes, sir.
I had a question that one time. Change, like you're talking just there.
Yeah, say what did it say again?
He said, everything I know for sure that gets me trouble.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to dissect that, all of that. Everything I know for sure, maybe
It just ain't close.
just ain't so. Well, you know, and that's a lot. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That, you know, everything that I think that I've got a handle on, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it may not be that way. This is why I need to have friends and family who would tell me the truth. I don't want my friends or family to lie to me about it when I go and tell them, look, I want you to take a look at my behavior and tell me if my behavior is normal. Is this the way things are supposed to be looking for me? Is this the way things are, this how I'm supposed to be behaving in that situation? Because if I'm not, and if I have somebody that can tell me the truth, then I have the option of changing. Can I change my behavior? Sure. Who's the only one who can change my behavior? You. Me. I can have a lot of people tell me what my behavior ought to be. I can have policemen tell me, they can beat me down with a nightstick and they can tell me what my behavior ought to be. But it's only me, it's only myself. I'm the only one who can change my behavior. There was a time back in the day when I used to drink in front of my children, and then that ended. And, you know, praise God for it, because, like I said, my kids don't drink.
What if you don't change your behavior, but you stay in it?
What if you don't change your behavior, but you say you changed your behavior? Well, how many of us know that we lie to ourselves all the time?
Yes, to myself.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Also, feel actions speak louder than words.
Actions speak louder. Actions speak louder than words. I will tell you this. Let me share this, because that's a really good point. We got to hurry on it. But he said, "What if I don't change my behavior, but I say I change my behavior?" Okay, here's the deal. We talk about it a lot of times, positive self-talk, right? So I'm going to, when I'm saying good things about myself, what am I doing? Setting up my goals for my future. So if I'm still doing the behavior that I know I need out of my life, but I'm saying I'm using positive self-talk to tell myself that I'm not doing that, that's not lying to myself, that's telling me my goal. I was listening to a lady the other day that was talking about positive self-talk. She said when she quit smoking, she smoked like 4 or 5 packs a day. She did a lot. And she said she started using positive self-talk to tell herself that she didn't smoke. And she said even while the cigarette was going to her lips, she was telling herself, I don't smoke. I don't like the idea of smoking. Smoking is stupid. Smoking is dangerous for my health, so therefore I don't smoke. Smoking, y'all need to get closer so you can hear. I'm sure you can't really hear each other. You know. So, yeah, you know, not talk. You know, even if I'm still talking in group and subgrouping and all of that stuff in group, and I'm saying to myself, I'm a good group person. I don't talk in group. I don't subgroup. I don't do all those things. While you're doing it, it's still effective. At some point, it's going to take over and it's going to work. Yes, sir.
That's kind of like faking it till you make it.
Faking it till you make it. Yeah, you can act like it until you don't have to act like it. Questions, comments, or snide remarks?
That's like Mark. You did a very wonderful job today.
You didn't do so well yourself.
I'll leave it at about it.
So, all of you folks over at North, write all that stuff on, any questions, comments, or snide remarks you have, and just send it to me in a letter.
And put that in your hand, so they ain't gonna have
Right.
I got a snide remark for you, doctor.
Sir, I didn't hear that, sir. Say it again. All right. He's not going to say it. All right, we're going to close down just a little bit early. Thank you, guys. Remember that tomorrow, this group we're not having, but we'll start back on Monday morning. And I do want to push up, give positive affirmations to a whole bunch of folks here. Some of you did really well. Some of the rest of you, it's the most amazing thing to me. As soon as we shut down, a lot of people are going to wake up and sleep. When we went on break, we shut off. We said it's break time.